Hey guys, what's up? Total Control 871. Alright, today I want to talk about economics and police brutality. These are two very contentious topics. I'm going to do my best to keep the time as short as I can. So I just got finished watching a video on YouTube, the David Pakman channel, and I believe the title of the video was "What Would Happen If Everybody in America Just Stopped Working?" An interesting concept indeed. Um, he had on a guest, a Dr. Peter Gray from Boston University. He was a research professor, did a lot of stuff like sociology, stuff like that. In my opinion, Dr. Gray's opinions are a lot of liberal claptrap. I mean, it is completely ridiculous to think that our ancestors, our hunter-gatherer, we're going back to the hunter-gatherer periods. He basically characterized, because you just check out the video, you can hear it for yourself. He characterized our ancestors as being on extended vacation. According to him, there was no real arduous work. They maybe toiled for about 20 hours a week, and all the rest of it was spent, well, just simply lounging around, talking and socializing and gossiping. It's almost his exact words. Um, it's really quite silly to think this. I will agree in a certain aspect that our ancestors probably had a very different concept of work as we do today. Um, our concepts of work revolve around a time clock. You know, when do you start? When do you end? Um, Hence the concept of work. Okay. With our ancestors, it wasn't a concept of work. It's a concept of survival. There is no beginning or end. You know, that's why his Dr. Gray's concept of time spent working is ludicrous. Example: how many bows and arrows did you go through for the hunt? Bringing down the beasts, bringing back the fatted calf in triumph, to the tribe. Were bows destroyed? How many arrows did you go through? How many spears did you go through? And, of course, to quote and paraphrase our neighbors to the deep south, ammo is something you can never have enough of. So, and definitely that probably would be true of our hunter-gatherer ancestors. You probably couldn't have too many bows. You couldn't have too many arrows. Definitely not too many arrows. Defense, it's one of the very first things that humans need. Defense is something that nature gives every last single animal. Given our body size and composition as mammals on Earth, our volume, we're extremely weak people. I mean, think about the size of a full grown man. Think about the volume size of a puma or jaguar. The man is probably actually larger than the jaguar, could quite easily outweigh them by 50 or maybe even 100 pounds. But the chances of him surviving unarmed, one on one, not good, you know. So it's kind of peculiar. Nature doesn't really give us physical defenses. It's almost as if nature, this is your defense. That's the best I could do for you. I made you sentient. I made you self-aware, you know. Hence the creation of our weapons, hence the creation of dominating the land. Okay, I don't want to segue too far there because that gets into a lot of PETA type stuff. Anyway, getting back to my focus here. So yeah, There was no concept of work and play like that. I mean, I'm sure they took time to relax. I'm sure there was stories to be told and recounted around the campfire. You know, they like to brag and talk about exactly how the beast was won. That was their television. That was that was the original reality TV, baby. Okay. Um, what would a Total Control blog be without sci-fi movie references? Um, Clan of the Cave Bear, Daryl Hannah. Incredible movie, incredible book. Um, Daryl Hannah's character, Ayla. Um, Nobody forced her to stay. As a matter of fact, the clan was a little spooked and creeped out by her. Her golden skin, her blonde hair, you know, they were vexed, you know, and quite frankly, she was there on a pity anyway, you know. Pity was the only thing that kept her in that clan for as long as it could. Um, of course, by our standards today, Ayla was raped and used at a man's behest. Okay? Um, but again, nobody forced Ayla to stay. She could have left the clan at any given time. Matter of fact, the clan wanted her to leave. You know, they never really fully accepted her. You know, they she always made them feel uncomfortable. She always spooked and vexed their primitive superstitions. Okay, um, I'm segueing here because I also want to talk about the police brutality. Uh, modern society today, the way we indulge police officers. Um, I think you guys have heard me reference it before. An iconic Norman Rockwell painting. I believe it shows a state trooper sitting at a lunch counter next to a pretty golden blonde little boy. You know, it's very 50s, very Americana, you know, all very white America, you know. And this is the kind of concept that Americans of all statures and all class desperately want to believe in. They want to imbue police officers and law enforcement with this kind of stoic virtue, okay? Um, and so much so that they are willing to overlook some pretty glaring, fucked up things that police do. Why is this? Why is society so willing to be so forgiving of law enforcement? Kind of goes back to our Clan of the Cave Bear scenario. We see in the beginnings, the men, you know, although it was not segregated, you know, nobody had a job as a cop, but the men themselves, they were everything. They were the protector. You know, when vicious animals came around, it was the men that ward them off, that killed them. It was the men that killed them for the purposes of clothing, using their skins, and for feeding the entire clan, not just themselves. It was the men, you know, of course, if you ever read the book or saw the movie, you know that women were forbidden to touch the weapons. And of course, Ayla ended up mastering the weapon. That's all fine and dandy, but let's not overlook the fact that it was the man that invented those weapons for Ayla to master. Not saying that a woman could not have invented that same weapon, or maybe even one better. Just simply pointing out some of the factoids here and how they apply to the socio-heuristics of society today. Um, this is why I personally believe that people are so willing to indulge police, because When the cop guns down the unarmed person and fucks up royally, society is willing to, well, they need to forgive them. And it's not entirely altruistic, in my opinion. I think that society has a need to forgive these law enforcement officers because it ultimately is self serving to society. When they lay their head down at night and they sleep, they need to feel safe and secure. They need to imbue these police officers with virtue and with a personal resolve that they may or may not have, actually, they themselves. But if you ever were to stop and give it any real amount of thought, then you know that society outnumbers law enforcement and the military. Oh my God, like, unless you were to use weapons of mass destruction, if society were to revolt against law enforcement and the military, there would be no question as to who would win. Society would win. There just simply aren't enough military and police. Therefore, they would end up having to use weapons of mass destruction to bring these people under control. Wasn't it Ben Franklin that said, uh, we should not fear our government, but the other way around, our government should fear us? So along those lines. Let's see, I want to wrap this up. I don't want to get too long. So yeah, work, play. I want to touch real quick on another sci-fi analogy. A lot of people have characterized Gene Roddenberry as a socialist. A socialist in regards of everybody having the same, I think it got lost on a lot of people exactly what Roddenberry was trying to convey to people. Um, if you were to watch Star Trek, especially Next Generation, I'm a big Next Generation fan. Um, Whenever we saw the captain's quarters, it really did not vary wildly from, Data's quarter or Geordie's quarters, or I think maybe they showed the ensign, like the real junior officers or the cadets officers, they were like toward the center of the saucer section. So I don't think they had windows. They may not have had windows. Because I think they had like a Anyway, I don't want to get too. I can get caught up talking about Star Trek, but anyway, the point is that because they had replicators, you can have anything that you want. My God, once they mastered energy matter conversion, once they were able to harness fusion reaction, and there was no more energy crisis. There's energy for everybody forever. You don't have to slave away for this. This is what Roddenberry was really trying to convey to us. It wasn't oh, we should distribute our wealth so that everybody has the exact same. It was about removing the sting, the deadly sting to life. This winter, I have no idea. I literally have no idea if I'm going to be alive this spring, the spring of 2017. I do not know. And that's not an exaggeration. I have no idea. But that's what Roddenberry was trying to convey. Just taking out the lethal sting to life. It's not that he was saying that you get to have luxury, just simply you don't have to worry about starvation. You don't have to worry about where you're going to lay your head. And more importantly, because nobody else out there in the world is obsessed. Put it like this. I wouldn't have to worry about locking up the Black Rider. Because as much as I love the Black Rider, the truth is that anybody that saw it, hey, that's an awesome bike. They could come up to me, talk to me about it on their pad, PADD, for all my Star Trek fans out there. They might take some notes as to what the geometry and what I'm using, the brakes, etc., etc. And hey, thanks. They could probably transmit that to, they could literally email their own computer, their own replicator back at their living quarters, and that bicycle would be waiting for them when they got home. You know, they don't have to steal mine. You can do whatever you want. The point is, do you want it? I could see a Lamborghini. Nice car, really awesome, truly is. And I can appreciate the beauty and the machinery, the engineering that goes into automotive construction. I can definitely appreciate these things. But is that how I want to travel? Is that how I want to live? No, it is not. Not saying I'd never get behind the wheel of a car, that's just fine. It's just something that I came to terms with once I explored myself. It's kind of why Roddenberry says space was the last frontier. Probably because in the Star Trek mythos, there was a third nuclear world war. And the survivors of that, once they finally came to terms with what led them to not only that nuclear world war, but all the rest of the nuclear world wars, what led them to this? Do you want to repeat this? Start taking inventory of what it is that truly makes you happy. Why do you go to the job? Why do you drive the car that you drive? Why do you have the possessions that you do? Why do you fill your house with the things that you do? Is it because it's something that you saw that maybe a celebrity or that was spoken about on a morning news show like the Today Show or Good Morning America, or all these type of things that middle class and upper middle class society turn to edify themselves, to help define themselves. Oh, I am this type of person because I have A, B, C, and X, Y, and Z. I no longer do that. I ask myself, what makes me happy? And a car isn't going to make me happy no matter how luxurious it is. I would like to have some very basic lodgings, but I don't want a lavish home. As a matter of fact, I'm going to touch on this last topic here, and then I'm going to close because I don't want to get too long here. Um, I know I told you guys before that I used to rent with a Republican couple, and I want to do a whole separate video on them. No, I'm not going to discuss. It's just simply I want to talk about the economics. It'll be like an economic kind of a thing. But they truly are. They are a wonderful couple. They really cared about me. They did the best they could to try and help me out of my situation. But one particular night, my buddy, the husband of uh, long story short, he ended up giving me a finger wagging lecture, about being more responsible and things like that. But like I say, there's a lot more to that I'll talk about later on. But he goes to give me this lecture, and he has it's like it's a nice house. The house looks very nice. It's very beautiful, extremely well kept. According to the mortgage market. Because I can't say that a house is worth a couple of thousand, a couple 100,000, and quite frankly, neither can he. And the value of the thing constantly goes up and down. Okay, a whole nother argument. But the point is, he's most likely going to spend the rest of his life paying for that house. That is plaster uh, of a particular construction quality. I'll say that and move on. Anyway, he then gives me a pointed question, in his lecture. He says to me, Charles, don't you want someday to be able to have a house like this? And I said to him very calmly and matter of factly, no. He's bald headed. His head turned bright red. What do you mean, no? Italians, their anger, boy. What do you mean, no? You don't want to. Oh, and he goes into this whole thing. He just didn't understand that, although as wonderful as his house looked, he had a couple of cars in the driveway, a beautiful wife, 10 years his junior, hubba hubba, still, it was a hamster wheel that I have no real desire to get on and to turn literally infinitas. Just for the rest of your life, to spin that hamster wheel, to keep that house going, to keep the cars, and they have a couple of beautiful baby boys. Now that I will definitely agree. We are in agreement on that. You can never spend too much money on your children, So giving them the best. Although I will say this, what schools charge and tuition and college and that shit's all a hustle. Anyway, another topic. But yeah, so he was just simply extremely angry that I wasn't willing to adopt his hamster wheel. I just really am not. I know who I am. I have a good sense of self. Who I am, what I'm made of, where I came from, where I'm going, and what I want in life, what I want from life. These are things that I don't have to spend the next eternity trying to figure out. So yeah, there's a lot more I could say on this, but I'm not. But yeah, that's why I believe society indulges police officers in their heinous draconian ways. Society wants to put that halo over them because they have a need to believe that when they go to bed at night and that they and their children and everybody's going to be safe. So therefore, we gloss over and we overlook some of the fucked up things that cops do. All right, so that's what's going on. A lot more I could say on this, but I'm going to cut it off. Total Control, 871.